Welcome to the GovComms podcast, bringing you the latest insights and innovations from experts and thought leaders around the globe in government communication. Now, here is your host, David Pembroke.
Hello, ladies and gentlemen, and welcome once again to GovComms, the podcast that examines the practice of content communication in government and the public sector. My name's David Pembroke, and thank you once again for joining me, and thank you for coming back week after week to listen to the podcast. I'm super grateful that so many of you have got an interest in this topic. Certainly, it's not the world's biggest audience, but nor do we claim to want to have the world's biggest audience. We're narrowcasting to people who work in government, who work in policy, who work in comms, who work in program delivery, who work in the public sector, who are interested in becoming more effective in their communication and their engagement. And we're grateful to that community who comes back week after week to listen to the stories that we get to tell. And today, we'll venture into the world of change communication. And I know so many of you out there are involved in change communication as we all deal with digital transformation, cultural transformation. Change is something that everyone is talking about. So today, we are going to speak to someone who has just been commended by the International Association of Business Communicators for excellence in a change communication program. And that's Nick Sharp-Paul, who is the Head of Strategy and Communication at the Society of Hospital Pharmacists of Australia. Nick graduated from the University of Melbourne with his Postgraduate Diploma of Editing and Communications back in 2008. And he's since filled a range of communications roles within the medical and pharmaceutical industry. Nick's worked in communications, he's worked in research, he's worked in media, and also he has worked in strategy. But this particular program that we're talking about has won the Gold Quill Merit Award. And I know many of you would have heard about the Gold Quill and certainly know about the IABC. But it was for a program titled A New Prescription, Elevating Australia's Leading Pharmacists. The campaign involved multiple communication channels using social, email, radio, and produced a range of very positive outcomes for the organisation that he works for, which is the Society of Hospital Pharmacists of Australia. Anyway, he joins me now on the line, and I'm delighted to welcome him to GovComms. So, Nick, first of all, congratulations for the award, and welcome to GovComms.
Thank you so much, David. It's a pleasure to be here.
So let's go into this and really sort of strip it back. And I really want to focus right into this particular campaign, all the way back to what was the business problem that you were trying to solve with this particular campaign?
Yeah, look, it's a great place to start. Like any award, you do have to weave a narrative. So what we were looking at was an organisation it's very storied. There's a great history with the Society of Hospital Pharmacists of Australia. But as with many societies, there is a need to modernise, to become more contemporary, and to diversify both the offering for members and also the realities of being a modern organisation, the business needs and the revenue needs. So there was a desire to have some more adventurous outreach, I suppose, which comes from the top. So there was a desire to modernise the board of SHPA. But to do that, it had to come from the members. It had to be a groundswell. And so the start of the campaign was to engage members, to listen to what they wanted, listen to how they responded and interacted with their board in order to mount a campaign and successfully have them vote in a new constitution. So that was stage one.
So just going back to that, where did the idea come from? Was it you pushing up saying we really have to sort of blow the smoke out of this place and get moving? Or was it, was there a group of or a leadership saying, if we don't change, the world's going to change around us and we will be very soon irrelevant?
Look, it was a bit of both, David. There were, as in any organisation with branches and a variety of stakeholders, members, as well as the ones governing, there were both sides. There were more conservative voices, there were more progressive voices, but we got the sense that the more progressive voices were keen for change, but there were very rigorous processes by which that had to happen. We did need to get a 75% threshold of a vote that needed to happen in a special meeting. That those very kind of musty settings come to mind, but they're very important to make sure that we did it in the right way. The first time it was tried was a few years back, and it wasn't successful, which is why we launched into a much more concerted campaign using a variety of different engagement tools. We travelled around the country, we sat down face to face, there were online consultations, online forums, and then leading up to the vote, we put together a pretty, well, in my view, sophisticated election campaign that really drew on some pretty modern graphic design and quite interactive tools to get that vote up. And it did carry. It was 90% in the end. So it was quite a good campaign.
Yeah, it's certainly very successful. But just take me back to that point of initiation, really, where you were starting to shape the story that was going to be told. So, and again, you're in that environment where it's a membership organisation. Some want change, some don't. How did you go about putting a story together that was sympathetic to both sides?
Yeah, look, that's exactly what we did. We did have to think about both sides. Constitutions are very dry documents. That's not going to surprise anyone. And what we did is really articulate the differences. We wanted to have more representative voices at the organisation. We wanted to have board positions that were appointed based on expertise, not simply from the membership. And we also wanted to remunerate those positions, to respect the expertise they were bringing to the organisation. And so what we did is actually break down, there were 5 distinct facets of change, and we pulled them up to the forefront. And then we made them the centre point of all the consultation. And then when it came to the campaign, they featured sort of week by week as a different campaign point, I guess you could say. Similar to having your top line policies that we're hearing day in, day out in the current federal election, these were the 5 points that we kept coming back to and reminding people that these were, I guess, the crystallisation of change. And it wasn't just here's an old document, here's a new document. It was these are the changes and these are how they will affect you. But more importantly, we have listened to you over the 3 months of consultation, and we've made sure that every voice, as much as possible, has been incorporated into the final document.
One of the things I'm really fascinated about at the moment in the work that I'm doing is around language and tone. So again, as you were putting that together, how much consideration did you give to the language and to the tone and the tone of voice, etc.? And what was your technique, or what was your approach to actually landing on the right form of words that gave expression to, accurately gave expression to that intent?
Yeah, look, that's absolutely true, what you've said. This is something that's so important and increasingly important. I think the main change, which we actually replicated across all of our membership comms, was to speak in language that was professional but conversational. So around the same time, we introduced a tagline, which was that SHPA was your professional partner. So presenting the organisation, which is very, very diverse. There's a huge range of things that we provide for our members, but just to centralize all of that and say, we are here with you every step of your career. Like it really couldn't be simpler. And that was the language we used throughout the Constitution campaign as well. It was, we heard you, we listened, you spoke, we listened, we acted, and here's the new version of this document. The other step, as I said, which carried over into all of our membership comms, is we grouped our diverse range of offerings into 3 simple buckets. It's a reasonably well-known fact that the brain perhaps comprehends things clearly when there's only 3 things to be presented with. So we grouped all of our offerings into 3. We kept our campaign pillars to 5, and we spoke in language that was active, it was interpersonal, and we found that it resonated.
And consistent. Did you find it was important to be absolutely ruthlessly consistent in the way that you presented your ideas?
Yeah, absolutely, absolutely. We even went down to the point of visual cues. So each of the campaign points had its own colour. It had its own icon, reflecting what it was that change would bring to the organisation. And we brought them in and out over the many weeks of their campaign, and they came from the colour palette of SHPA's corporate style. So there's automatically an affinity there, there's a resonance, and we found that gave the campaign more punch because there was an instant connection back to the organisation and back to that high level messaging.
So just in terms of that, what weight would you give to the importance of visual identity, visual cues in terms of, the communication of this particular campaign?
I think it's enormously important. And this is just reflecting technological change. You can't look at your phone or look up on the street without seeing something that has been professionally designed and probably designed in a matter of minutes by someone, even on a mobile phone or usually at a desktop. We're bombarded by really excellent design. We're also bombarded by increasingly savvy and targeted messaging. And I think it's the responsibility of all not-for-profit and government communications to really step up and make sure that we're competing at that level, because that's the landscape that we find ourselves in. An example that I like to use is the process that all of us go through when we're booking a flight, if we're not lucky enough to have someone booking it for us. And you think about that interface, you think about how crisp and clear all your options are. You have the base price, then you can add meals, you can add bundles and baggage, and it's really tailoring the product to your needs. And as a membership organisation, I think we have to present that same flexibility and satisfying interaction online with our membership offering, and design is an integral part of that.
And did you find that there is that expectation from your membership that it would be at that same quality, as you say, as the airlines, as the banks, as the telcos?
Yeah, absolutely, and I think that's reasonable. I know there's data around how many clicks you should have as the depth of a website, and that comes through when people are renewing their membership. We'll get lots of phone calls of people saying it's just too much. By the 8th or 9th page or 9th step, I've checked out, and I'm probably going to renew over the phone with my credit card. And I think that's a reasonable expectation. This is the quality of online interaction these days is a lot better. And yeah, it's up to us to step up in the same way.
Now, that's obviously part of the, further down the track. But again, if I just take you back, so in terms of getting the story straight, getting the design straight, getting obviously shaping up that engagement right. But importantly, I think what you've suggested that you had to do was to get in front of people. And to communicate face to face. So it wasn't something that was run from behind a computer at head office, but you felt that there was an absolute need, if you were going to succeed, that you had to actually be in front of people in a physical sense. And why was that so important?
It was important for two reasons. One was that you can tell a much more detailed story. You can have a conversation face to face for an hour that you just can't have on the phone. People get fidgety, they get distracted, and you lose that warmth of face-to-face interaction. And don't get me started on trying to do telcos with hospitals. The way that Wi-Fi drops in and out, it's really just in the too hard basket. And as part of that longer conversation, you can get the feedback in real time. You can see people's facial expressions. You can see what might be rubbing them the right way or the wrong way. And it also allows you to tell a longer term story. Part of the reason that we wanted to modernize, we wanted to have a board with expert directors, and we wanted to increase our footprint in an advocacy sense, was that we wanted to really enact stronger change in hospital pharmacy. So we could actually tell the story of how we were going to regenerate our advocacy model. We were going to have a greater groundswell of ideas and participation in that advocacy, and that through those measures we would be able to lead to some really great outcomes, which is what we've done more recently in the last 12 months.
So interestingly, at those opportunities, were you mindful Obviously, interesting point you raised there, that you could see that, obviously you'd try a line or present a fact or a line of argument or something, and you can see the physical reaction on people's faces and the way that they, give their reaction to that information that you have communicated to them. But were you then sort of formalising that data feedback at the end of each of those engagements to make sure that you were understanding at a maybe even deeper level and getting that feedback that would then help you to plan the next engagement?
Yeah, absolutely. We were. I don't think I've ever typed faster in my life. We were getting every single reaction down. We were also synthesizing different topics and themes, which is actually how we came to the 5 campaign points. We originally had an idea of what the main aspects of the change were that we wanted to highlight, but we only settled on them after we also factored in what members said were the most important points to them. So it was truly a combination, which I think led to the campaign having the success that it did.
What's some of your advice about running successful face-to-face engagements such as that? What were some of the techniques that you used that you found really helped to promote that really useful two-way engagement?
I think the main thing is relentless planning. I think people automatically will, perhaps rightly, be a little suspicious if they feel that focus groups have been hastily organised or even cherry-picked. I think you need to be allow as much lead time as possible to flag the reasons that the consultation is coming together, the purposes, the outcomes, and also the feedback loop. If there is consultation that then kind of trails off into some planning that can't really be seen, then some cynicism may arise. So the feedback loop, the long lead time, and openness, I think, are the key things.
And what about providing people with information prior to those engagements? And at what level or how much detail were you providing to the people who you wanted to turn up to those consultations in advance?
Yeah, so a key part of that was we did a constitution change roadmap. And that stepped out every single phase of the consultation. There was the initial round, there was refinement to the document, socializing that document, and then round 2 of consultation, and then everything repeated. Just to be clear that from end to end, people knew exactly where they stood, they knew how many opportunities they had, and they also knew when they could expect to see the result of their feedback.
Mm-hmm. Okay, so you've finished with that particular part and you've come back, you've synthesised, and then it's time to really put it all together to get the campaign. I suppose that's the early part of the campaign, but now you're going to get sort of moving. What happened next?
Well, what that meant was that we were able to, through having a more contemporary board, we really ramped up our advocacy activity. Being a reasonably small organisation, we'd focus on one major advocacy piece per year. The first ones of these were addressing medicine shortages, which we did in 2017. And because we had this active period of consultation, we had better crystallised our membership offering. We'd brought in some quite sophisticated graphic design into our membership renewal campaign. What we had was a larger body of members, our largest ever core membership figure, and also we had really high penetration of that membership in our subset advocacy program. So more members overall and more members participating in advocacy.
And certainly, so that's an interesting point though. So that those business objectives, so the objective wasn't renewal of the Constitution, the objective was to grow the membership.
That's right. That was the starting point. We knew we wanted to be more ambitious as an organisation. We knew that we first had to move to a more contemporary constitution to enable that stronger push into advocacy.
Now you're talking about a constituent body, the Hospital Pharmacists of Australia, and that's obviously hospital pharmacists, but it's also open to, pharmacy technicians, pharmacy students, and others who are in the pharmacy community. And they are distributed across Australia in, very small towns all the way through to the large teaching hospitals and everywhere in between. How did you go about understanding the best ways to communicate this message of change?
Well, we do have, as with any membership organisation, it comes down to our people. Our people are the ones that are passionate to see change. They're the ones who were on the progressive end of the spectrum became our greatest champions. And we have a very active branch network. So as part of the dissemination of updates, we had our traditional member channels, but we also made sure that we equipped our branches to reach out at a local level. As in many organisations, when you hear something peer-to-peer, you're much more likely to take it on board. It's probably more likely to be crafted in language that you identify with. And so we just made sure that we equipped our branches with the core information, and then we would encourage them to socialise at a local level.
So you were saying in terms of the content, obviously distributed through social and, other channels that you have. What were some of the big successes that you had in terms of some of the content you created, both in terms of stories, but also in terms of formats? If it's perhaps video, or maybe it was audio, or did you do podcasts, or did you do webinars? What was that mix, and what were some of the big successes?
What we saw, the biggest successes came through our major advocacy pushes in 2017 and 2018, and it was really media led. We had, as I mentioned, this larger body of members, a larger participation in our advocacy, so we were able to get some really significant numbers behind our main advocacy work. For example, we had a 24-hour period where we asked our members to record every instance in which they could not find the medicine that they needed for the care that they needed to provide. And we got over 1,500 responses. The power of that data meant that when we hit media with that information, it had enormous coverage, which gave us the big shot in the arm. And then we would filter, cut and slice those messages and run that through to members over the rest of the month. So it began with a media bang, and then we would cut and slice the messaging and remind our members constantly of the power of that third party voice. I think that even in the incredibly fragmented information landscape we have today, the power of media for government and not-for-profit comms is as strong as it's ever been, because people, I think, here in this country, I hope, still really look to that as a verifiable source of information. So we'd lead with the media, and then we would cut and slice quote packages with graphic designed campaign tiles for social media, and we would also interview our board chair and chief executive and bundle up the success of the campaign in video annual report 4 months later.
So in terms of that tactic around using research and using your internal resources, your internal human resources, to be able to assemble, a data set like 1,500 pharmacists responding to a very easy to understand problem. How often do you use that, and how quickly can you spin up research reports like that are sufficiently credible that the media will be interested?
Look, I wish we could do it more, but just because of the reality of the size of our organisation, we're currently around a 30 headcount, but we're running events and conferences and magazines and all sorts of things. We currently can do one big hit per year. We have an incredibly talented policy team who can do the most amazing work, but it is a complex area, healthcare. Our one last year, after the success of medicine shortages, was actually on reducing opioid-related harm in the community. And we found really quite stunning data about the need for hospital pharmacists to be with patients as they leave hospital, to advise them and counsel them on the risks of taking opioids after surgery, because we're well behind the United States when it comes to opioid addiction, but not that far behind. So that was our most recent advocacy effort. So we're looking at a strike rate, I guess you could say, of about one per year.
Yeah, okay. But also, trying to find that seam of inspiration from what is resonating in the community, and then deciding to research that, or does it work the other way?
It's two-way, because of the success of the membership renewal campaigns in recent years and our revitalised advocacy structure, we do have a much stronger groundswell of ideas, and we respond to that, absolutely. We have 24 streams of different disciplines, such as infectious diseases, emergency medicine, cardiology, and these are the pharmacists that are absolutely leading the way nationwide in these discrete areas. So they gather regularly. There's a leadership committee that is always bubbling up ideas from the coalface to make sure that our advocacy team is aware of them.
So how do you make the choices then? Because even just in that small listing of topics, it's an area where you're never going to run out of very newsworthy news, are you?
We're never going to run out. The world of medicine is absolutely fascinating, and it's also just pure demographics. There's more Australians than ever before. We're an aging population, and I think I won't quote the stat because I'll get it wrong, but the number of people over the age of 70 taking 8 or more medicines regularly it's something like half. It's just astounding. And when you take more medicines, you have added complications. And one of the key figures we're trying to reduce is that every year 250,000 hospital readmissions are due to people not taking their medicine correctly. So they're completely preventable. And the bottom line to the health budget is $1.4 billion. So we have our work cut out for us. But in terms of your question and how we decide, it's we have to prioritise. Because we can only really do one major campaign per year, we have to look at ultimately what is having the greatest effect on patients. We exist for our members, and our members exist to provide excellent patient care. So we have to look at that patient impact.
So clearly, as an award-winning campaign that has been able to deliver, significant impact on the business, what were some of the things that went wrong? There must have been, in all of the decisions that you made, there must have been some things and some decisions that you made that things didn't quite work out as you thought. So what were some of those things, and why didn't they work?
Do you mean in terms of the advocacy campaign?
Yeah.
Yeah. Well, it's for one of them, it's a little too early to say. Medicine shortages had great success. It's actually now it's now required under Australian law from the 1st of January this year that drug companies have to mandatorily report shortages for anything that will be out of stock within 6 months. So that was actually passed into legislation. But with the second piece of recent times on opioid harm, we're still in the process of pulling together different stakeholders to try to come up with some solutions. We have 33 recommendations from the report, so there's a lot to do. So we're not too sure how that one's going to go. It is a hot topic, but also it's an election year, and the attention of the Australian health world is being pulled in a lot of different directions. So our focus is to keep opioids up there as a focal point, but I'd say it's too early to say how we're going on that one, but I've got my hopes up.
Okay, just a final question. What's your, stepping back, obviously you are heavily involved in multiple parts of running communication for an industry association. So you have internal challenges, external challenges, you've got different, the whole multi-channel sort of challenge that you've got sitting in front of you. What's your advice to people as to how they can be most effective in that, fast-moving, busy, highly contested, large, lots of decisions that need to be made? What's your advice to people as to how they can be more effective as a communication professional in this environment?
Yeah, that's a really excellent question. I think there's two things. One is about yourself, and the other is about the people you surround yourself with. In terms of yourself, you really have to be quite resilient, and you have to be incredibly adaptable. You shouldn't ever get into a position where you perhaps feel that your role or your status precludes you from, going to a conference and handing out minties or drafting an email for someone else because they just can't get to it. No matter what level you think that role perhaps, or that email, should the person that should write it, you need to do a lot of things. You need to do them really quickly, and if something doesn't work and it fails and it falls apart, you have to just put that to one side and you have to just keep pushing. And the same goes with the people around you. I've been really focused on developing a very multi-skilled team. And as I mentioned a bit earlier, there's some things that perhaps people have overlooked, like dedicated graphic design in a very, very small team, I think is one of the priorities. People who can speak off the cuff, that can speak to media confidently, even if that's not their core role. Having multidisciplinary, I guess, in comms speak, people around you, as well as being really adaptable yourself, I think are the ingredients for success.
Well, Nick, thank you so much for giving up a part of your very busy day today. I can hear the phone ringing, so I'm sure.
Yeah, sorry about that.
I'm sure. I see a busy life. I see someone who is running around everything from designing strategy to handing minties out at conferences. So I will let you get back to that important work, and best of luck with that, and congratulations on your success in being a Gold Quill Merit Award winner with the International Association of Business Communicators. That's a great recognition for obviously a fantastic campaign.
Thank you so much. It's a wonderful organisation.
Okay, and thanks to you, the audience, for coming back once again. Great conversation there today. So much to take away from Nick Sharp-Paul there. Obviously, clearly a very smart operator. But I love that last point that he raised around humility, really, is just to know your place, just to jump in, to be good at what you do, but don't ever feel like you're too good to be doing the work, to doing the heavy lifting, because different stuff has to happen at different times to make sure that we create those engagements, we create the connections, because ultimately we are in the people business and we have to be able to move people. And it could be a simple thing as handing someone a minty all the way through to crafting a beautiful graphic design or some other thing. So great advice there. And I also like that other thing about surrounding yourselves, understanding where your limitations are and who you need to have around you such that you can continue to add value in this fast-paced world that we are living, that we all live in and we all work in on a daily basis. So some great advice there to finish it off. So thanks again to you for coming back. I'll be back at the same time in about a fortnight, but for the moment, it's bye for now.
You've been listening to the GovComms podcast. If you enjoyed this episode, be sure to rate and subscribe to stay up to date with our latest episodes.